Hello and welcome to the show today. My guest made a brief cameo in my last interview, but he came back today for a proper sit down. Let's go to a clip now to see a bit of his work.
Sniping's a good job, mate. It's challenging work, out of doors. I guarantee you'll not go hungry, because at the end of the day, long as there's two people left on the planet, someone is going to want someone dead. Not a crazed gunman, Dad. I'm an assassin. Well, the difference being one has a job and the other's mental sickness. I'll be honest with you. My parents do not care.
Don't you just love that? Ladies and gentlemen, John Patrick Lowrie.
Thank you. Thank you. Very polite applause. I feel like a golfer.
Thank you very much for, coming back on the show.
Sure. I know, I just happened to pop by when you were interviewing my wife, so I couldn't resist.
Fair enough. So, as I always thought, what got you into voice acting then?
Well, I was an actor and had an agent in town for on-camera work and voice work, and what that mostly consisted of at that time, this is like, the early 90s, early to mid 90s, was, commercials and what they call industrial videos, which are instructional things for products, and instructional videos for employees. If your company wants to put together an thing that says, I did a lot of them for Boeing, and so there were a lot of safety things about lathing aluminum and, stuff like that. And then every once in a while, I'd get a TV show or a movie, and I did 3 films and I forget, 6 or 7 television shows back in those days. And then when the computer games really first started up, since we live in Seattle, a lot of it was here, and Sierra Online was up here at that time, and they sent out auditions for a game called Betrayal at Antara. And at that time, everybody had to go down to a recording studio to audition, because the internet was in its very early stages and nothing was really going on there. And we would go down to a recording studio and audition, and you'd see all of your competition. There'd be a long line of people that was, all the people that you were competing against. And if they liked you, they hired you. And so I got hired for Betrayal at Antara. And it seemed to be, it was kind of a medieval setting. It was, very early video game. So the graphics were very primitive. Everything was very primitive. But it seemed to be, set in England, and it seemed to be kind of medieval. And so I thought, okay, well, British Isles. One of the reads that I gave them for this kind of father guy was, I just said, okay, I'll just do kind of a Sean Connery thing. And so I did, and I got the job. And this was the state of things at that time. This was probably in 1997 or 6 or something like that. That I got out there, and the guy said, we really liked your audition, that Sean Connery thing, that Welsh accent. And I thought to myself, actually, Sean Connery's from Scotland, so I don't think I was doing a Welsh accent. But I didn't say anything because, they're the boss. And so I said, oh, good. Well, I'm glad you liked it. But back then, the structure of the games was such in its incipient stages. They hadn't really figured out how to do it yet. And at one point, well, for one thing, they just gave you your lines. They didn't give you the conversation that you were going to be in. They didn't tell you what the situation was, what your motivation was, what your objective was, anything. They just gave you a bunch of words to say. And at one point, there was, I was just supposed to say goodbye to some name. I forget. Goodbye, Myron, or somebody like that. And I said, okay, who is this guy? Who am I saying goodbye to? And they said, oh, it's your son. I said, okay, well, why am I saying goodbye to him? Well, okay, at this point in the game, he's either going to go off to like another dimension and you're never going to see him again, or he might just be going to the store and be right back in 5 minutes. So could you say goodbye to him so that it would work in either situation? And it's like, okay, I'm either saying goodbye to my son like I'm never going to see him again, or I'm saying goodbye to him like he's going to go to the store and be right back. Okay, so I said, all right, goodbye, Myram. I said, yeah, that's great, that's great. And so, you just had no idea. And so the acting back then was pretty bad because the actors had no idea what they were doing. They just had a bunch of words to say. So that was my my very first computer game. That was a very long answer to a very short question.
No, it's good. It's good. So, for you as an actor, what's like the hardest part of like portraying a character? I mean, like you said, with the games that you can't see who you're speaking to. So is it that, or is it like the direction you're given? What's like the hardest part for you for doing voices?
Well, I think that the challenge for doing computer games is to make them real, to really give them a high degree of reality, because most of the stuff that you're doing in computer games is pretty extreme. It's either very mundane, like I've played in No One Lives Forever and No One Lives Forever 2. I played kind of this spy's boss. And so a lot of the stuff that I said was just telling her what her job was going to be. And then when she was out in the field, I would be kind of, hooked up to her by radio and saying, oh, look out over there. There's somebody in that cave. Watch out behind you. People are coming. I see a weapons cache over here. And so it was just kind of delivering the news. But you still needed to keep you still needed to live in that world where her life might be in danger, and I'm trying to save her life all the time by just giving her the right information. And so you needed to keep that sense of urgency in it. And that can be a challenge when you're just in a little tiny recording booth talking to a microphone. But that's the actor's job, is to put themselves there. And then, of course, really when it comes into play is when you're playing someone who's in the midst of the action and, bullets or ray guns or monsters are crawling all over you, and ultimately you get eaten and torn limb from limb and stuff like that. In Halo ODST, I play this really, really horrible, awful South African bigot rapist guy who is just a slime ball, and then at the end he gets attacked by an angry mob and literally torn limb from limb. And to vocalize what it would be like to have your body ripped apart was, you really have to dig down, because if all you do is, go, I'm dying, nobody cares. So you have to really figure out how to make it real.
Now, you've done quite a few voices throughout like a variety of games. Which is like your favorite game to have worked on so far? Which one have you like enjoyed?
Let me see. That's interesting. I mean, I really like working with the Valve people because they're very creative, and the kinds of things that they come up for their characters to do and say is very creative and always challenging. I'm working on a game right now that they're going to be. I'm not sure how it works anymore. You can go to the website, and I'm not sure if it's going to be released or if it's kind of already released, and they're continuing to release more and more parts of it. But there's a game called Defense of the Ancients that I have a gig coming up in about a week, where I play 4 different characters, and coming up with the different voices has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed working on Half-Life 2 a lot, because it's just, the mood of the world that they created was so kind of cool and post-apocalyptic and stuff like that. I don't know. Some of the games are so totally crazy. I can tell you. I mean, there was this one game called Champion Bass Fishing, which was, this is totally out of print now. I think it was back at an early game in the 90s. And the games that are kind of boring for the actor are the games where you're just kind of telling people where to go and what to pick stuff up and get more ammunition. And of course in Championship Bass, it's like, okay, there's grass over there, there's bass over here, basically telling how to do. It's always more fun when you're playing a character, and boy, I've played so many of them. Let me see. The guys at Bungie are a lot of fun to work with, and doing Halo ODST and Halo Reach was a lot of fun. I'm also I'm playing one of the Great Eagles called Balaram on the upcoming Lord of the Rings game, that's going to be released this year. And that was a lot of fun too. Just because I enjoy Lord of the Rings a lot, and getting to be in that world and see the graphics before anybody else sees them and stuff like that is a lot of fun. But my favorite, that'd be a tough one. Tell you, the game that I did the most different character voices on was a game called The Suffering, where I think I did 13 or 14 different characters. And of course, the hard thing about that is not coming up with all the different voices, but then at the end of doing all of the dialogue, you then have to scream and die as each character. And you can imagine trying to figure out how you would sound different screaming and dying as a guy with a New England accent, as opposed to a guy with a Southern accent, as opposed to a guy with a New York accent. It's like you're just going, ah, how do you put the dialect into that stuff? So, but I remember and there was one character in that where I played a guy who, of course, I mean, it was set in a prison that there was a rift in the space-time continuum, and so all the ghosts of all the people who had been executed there were coming back into the prison and like messing with the convicts. And so some of the characters I played were convicts, and some of the characters I played were ghosts. And one of them was a guy who used to be the executionist, or the executioner, and he took his job so seriously that he was constantly trying out different kinds of execution on himself. And one kind of gas he tried, actually killed him. And so now he was just this big gas cloud. And so I'd already done all these other voices, and this was the last voice that I needed to do that day. And so I needed to figure out how to be the voice of a gas cloud, and that was challenging. So, but the early days were so insane. It's actually gotten more. As the games have gotten more realistic and the writing has gotten better and they figured out what they're doing, it's gotten a lot more like acting in a movie or acting in a television show or even acting on stage. You're actually, creating a character and figuring out what he's doing.
Now, as many people know, you and your wife have both worked on Valve games like Half-Life, Forza, etc.
Huh?
What's it been like working alongside her and certain games?
Well, it's important to realize that most of the time, Ellen will be called in, even if we're working on the same game, and even if our characters talk to each other in the same game, she will be called in one time and I will be called in another. She'll read all of her lines while I work with her, and then I'll come in and read my lines while they work with me. If we actually talk to each other, it's usually they'll just play recordings of her for me to respond to or recordings of me for her to respond to. But there was one game called Left 4 Dead that we weren't in the bulk of the game. Most of the game was spent people running around killing zombies and trying to get out of this town that was infested with zombies. But since the folks at Valve had learned that we were married to each other, and of course they didn't know that we were married to each other when they first hired us. That was back when they were putting together the game Half-Life 2. And they hired me to come in and be a lot of the citizens and be this kind of faux British guy named Odessa Cubbage. And they were working with me for a long time, and then they needed the voice of the Overwatch, which is this kind of computer-generated voice that announces things to the populace, and you hear it in the background. It's always, somebody is, an escaped convict, or, the main character of the game, I forget how they referred to him, but, he's down in Sector 4. We need more police. And you'd hear this voice in the background. And so they called her in much later for that. But anyway, they found out that we were married to each other. And so they decided that it was, and the fans started knowing about it after Portal came out and Ellen got so famous, then people started figuring out that we were married to each other. And so when they were putting Left 4 Dead together, they decided to play a joke on the fans and hire us to be this bickering married couple at the very end of the game, that if you get out of the city and you manage to get away from all the zombies, you start hearing these voices over the radio, and I play the husband who has a boat on the river who thinks it's a good idea to pick people up if they're survivors. And so I'm on the radio saying, hello, if there are any survivors, we can give you a ride. Contact us here, get back. And in the background, you hear Ellen saying, what are you, crazy? There's zombies all over the place. We're not picking anybody up. We need to get out of here. And I said, no, leave me alone. I need to pick up these survivors. So, there's this whole little fight that we do. But you have to figure out that it's us. I don't know. They kind of snuck it in as kind of an Easter egg for the fans. But that was the only time that she and I have actually been in the same room together, because they wanted us to improv off of each other, and they gave us basically the idea of what they wanted us to say, and there were some lines that they wanted us to get in. But basically, we spent a lot of time just improving and fighting, and so that was a lot of fun. But for me, the weirdest part about working with Ellen is, like in Half-Life 2, if I'm playing Half-Life 2, for one thing, I'm going through the game and I hear my voice, coming out of all the citizens that are trying to help me. They're saying, oh, you can get away by going this way. You can hide in here and stuff like that. But at the same time, my wife's voice is the Overwatch saying, he's over there, kill him, get him. So I'm helping me and my wife is trying to get me killed. So that's fun.
So you mentioned a few games that you're currently working on about to come out. Is there anything else that you're working on or going to be doing in the future that people can look forward to?
The most exciting thing for me right now is that I've finished a science fiction novel called Dancing with Eternity a couple years ago, and it's going to be released on Camel Press in the fall, September 15th. And if anybody wants to get to know more about that, they can always go to my website, which is just my name, JohnPatrickLowrie.com. That's JohnPatrickLowrie.com. And you can find out about stuff like that. Ellen and I have been invited to a lot of fan cons. So far, we are booked at the Midwest Anime Fan Con in Chicago this July, I think it's 15th through 17th. And then there is fan con, I think it's called GMX, I'm not sure, in Nashville, Tennessee in October, I think 21st, 22nd, 23rd. And we've been invited to one in Washington, D.C. in January. We're still thinking about that one. And then we're also going to Birmingham, England in April. I think it's like April 12th or something like that. Do you know the name of that one? You may be familiar.
Ella mentioned the last interview, she said it was called KittyCon, and it's between the 13th and 15th of April, 2012.
Right. So we're looking forward to those. I'm continuing to do work on Defense of the Ancients, which is a new game that Valve is releasing now or is going to release now. I'm not sure. They're kind of changing their paradigm. So that in future, I think games aren't going to be so much something that you buy as something you kind of subscribe to. So that's going along. I started out as a musician before I ever became an actor. And so I have a fun gig this summer. It's been about 17 years since I've had a gig playing in an orchestra. But Seattle Opera is doing Porgy and Bess, and I'm a guitarist, and I also play banjo and mandolin and stuff if I need to. And so they hired me to play the banjo part for Porgy and Bess. So I'm going to be doing that this summer. That's just totally that's just kind of, if you want to know what my life is like. Sometimes I act, sometimes I'm playing a guitar, sometimes I'm writing books, so I do a lot of different things to keep myself busy. But I'd say the novel coming out September 15th and the fan cons coming up are the most exciting things that we know about right now. We never know about new games until we audition for them and get them. So we just, and even then we can't talk about them. I mean, if the games are still being, in production and haven't been announced yet, it's all proprietary and they don't want us to tell anybody anything about it. So I can't help you there.
Now, one last thing before we finish. There's a lot of people out there doing trying to get into voice acting and stuff. Is there any tips you can give them?
Get your acting chops in order, because the guys writing these games want super, super, super realistic stuff. I mean, they want this stuff to basically be like a movie. And then put together a voice demo, and depending on where you are, you can find people who will help you do that. I mean, it'll cost you some. It'll probably cost you $400 or $500. I have no idea what it would cost in England, but you need a voice demo. And the nice thing about it in this day and age, back when I started, you actually had to have cassette tapes, and you had to make up a whole bunch of them, and it cost you a whole bunch of money. These days, all you need is an MP3 file, and you do it all over email. You need to be able to audition on your home computer because that's how auditions are done now. So get set up to do that. I mean, and with modern computers, you don't have to hardly do anything to set yourself up. But I would buy a better microphone than most computers come with to do that, and then get yourself an agent. And it depends on where you are, because if you are in a place where they aren't making games, it's going to be a lot harder to get into it. I mean, I live in Seattle, and a lot of games are actually designed and made right here in Seattle. But a lot of games are made in LA and probably some other places, but I'm not sure where they are. But you probably want to, you can call up, I mean, Bungie is right here. They're across the lake in Bellevue, or actually in Kirkland, and Valve is across the lake in Bellevue. Monolith, which is also Warner Brothers, is in Kirkland as well. And there are a bunch of game companies down in LA because there are a lot of actors down there. But I'm sure you can get work in New York and stuff like that, and probably in London. I don't know. You tell me. Is there a big gaming industry in England now? I mean, are they producing many games over there?
I think there's quite a few companies dotted around in different areas of England. Like up in Liverpool and London and whatnot.
Yeah. I think that it's all become much easier for people to at least connect with folks like that because of the internet. If you email companies, if you email somebody like Valve, I would suggest that you don't attach your voice reel right away. I would email them first, ask them if they would, accept an MP3 file over the internet, because a lot of times, people are worried about viruses and stuff like that, and they don't want to open attachments from people they don't know. So I would suggest that. I hope that's helpful.
I believe it is, and I'm sure a lot of people would definitely take that on board. So, and thank you very much for coming on the show. You have been a terrific guest.
Well, thank you, Caboose.
So, ladies and gentlemen, John Patrick Lowrie.
I hope you... Great.
And I've been Caboos15. Catch you next time, folks.